Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Friday night here in the country can get a little crazy sometimes, so I don't mind when my neighbors cause a ruckus or loud party as long as it's not too crazy. Tonight I'm on call for Virginia State Police towing rotation, which means I've got 25 minuets to get to wherever the wreck/DUI/impound/etc. is. As luck would have it, my neighbors are having a party, and guess what's blocking my driveway? That's right, about 25, 30 cars. I live down a dirt road at the end of a cul-de-sac, and it's pretty narrow. One in, one out type of deal, and with this rain we've been having, parking in the grass/clay/mud is really not the best idea. Even with a 4x4, it can still get tricky. I noticed a few cars coming in early this evening and walked over to my neighbors and made it pretty clear I was on call, and as long as they didn't block the road or my driveway, all would be good. No problems here. Well, I get a call from my boss asking if I can go warm up the rotator and the light-duty flatbed, tow trucks. It's about 12:30 a.m., so I get my boots on and other gear because if I'm up, I might as well stay at the shop and clean a few things to stay busy and make the night move along. I get in my car, and as I'm backing out of the driveway, I notice I'm blocked in. I don't mean by one truck, but by nearly 15 different vehicles. I calmly walk over to my neighbors about a 1/8 mile hike, and as I'm looking for them through the crowd of drunk teenagers, some idiot wants to know why I'm on his property. He's not the property owner. I've never seen this classy gentleman. Finally, I find my neighbor and ask her if she can move the cars. I've got to go to work, she says in a normal tone. Doesn't yell over the music. Into the house. Whoever's blocking the driveway next door, move your trucks. Then slams the door in my face. I knock again and she answers with a drunken, "Oh God, this idiot again?" Internally, I'm thinking, all right then. I do my best to explain, I'm on call and need to get out of my driveway to go to work. She comes back sloshing a natural light, exclaiming it's a party. Relax, shuts the door in my face and yells, "Duck that dyke, idiot." I smile, and as I'm walking away, Macho Man throws a beer at me and cackles. "Yeah, you best leave. Go on, git." I get on the phone with dispatch and call for as many trucks as we have available tonight, about 10, and tell them to come on over. Mama's got some PPIs, private property impounds. I call police dispatch and ask if they'd send out an officer, in case things get out of hand, and as soon as he gets to my place, my rigs start rolling up and hooking vehicles up and taking them to the impound yard. We get down to the last 3 vehicles. A yellow Civic, gold Silverado, and an old F-150. The Civic owner bolts to his car and takes off. The Silverado girl, pretty wasted, gets stuck and starts tearing up my property. Officer walks over and she throws a fit. Long story short, she gets arrested for underage drinking and DUI. The Ford owner doesn't show up. I get to work after all the impounds, and with me I brought coffees and snacks for my drivers. Tomorrow's not a business day, which means if these tools want their cars back, it's going to be the regular $289.50 plus 2 days of storage at $55 a day and a $100 gate fee. I make a note in every single storage sheet, papers that the vehicle owners get, to thank the girl who had the party for getting towed. Several of the kids' parents called wanting to know where their cars or trucks were. I gave them the yard address and told them they can come anytime. As soon as they started shouting about illegal tows and threatened with lawyers, I showed them pictures of their cars with no parking signs, and explained that I tried to reason with the owner of the property, me, but she was tired of being blocked in by drunken teenagers. There are signs on my road saying no parking and not to block the driveway. Don't piss off a tow truck driver, she'll legally take your vehicles. The next one is an entitled people story. Moving to America from Brazil was a dream come true for me and my family. We were excited to start a new life in a new country, but we never imagined the challenges we would face. One of our biggest challenges was our next-door neighbor, Karen. From the moment we met Karen, we knew there was something off about her. She would glare at us whenever we spoke Portuguese in our backyard, or when we had family and friends over. She would make snide comments about us being immigrants, and how we should go back to our own country. It was clear that she had an issue with us and our skin color. But the worst of it all came when she found out we had a pool in our backyard. Karen was furious that we had something she didn't, and she made it her mission to make our lives miserable. She would come over uninvited, demanding that her children swim in our pool. We tried to be polite and tell her that we preferred to keep the pool to ourselves, but Karen would never listen. She would call us names, insult us, and threaten to call the police if we didn't let her children swim. One day we were all in the pool enjoying a beautiful summer day when Karen showed up with her children. She barged into our backyard without even knocking on the gate and demanded that her children be allowed to swim. When we told her no, she became furious and started yelling at us. That's when she did the unthinkable. She grabbed her own baby and threw her into our pool. I was shocked and horrified. I immediately jumped into the water to save the baby while my wife called the police. Karen started screaming that we had thrown her baby into the pool and tried to blame us for it, but luckily we had security cameras that captured everything. When the police arrived, we showed them the footage and Karen was arrested for child endangerment and trespassing. After that incident, Karen's true colors were exposed, and the entire neighborhood learned about her racist behavior towards us. We thought that was the end of it, but we were wrong. Karen didn't stop harassing us. She would call the police on us for the slightest noise, and she would make false accusations about us to our neighbors. We were scared and felt like we couldn't even enjoy our own property anymore. We decided to fight back. We hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit against Karen for discrimination and harassment. It was a long and difficult battle, but we were determined to stand up for our rights. We gathered evidence, wrote affidavits, and went through depositions. We even had to testify in court about the incident with the pool. Finally, after months of fighting, we won our case. Karen was forced to pay damages and was ordered to stay away from us and our property. It was a bittersweet victory, but we were relieved that we could finally live in peace. Update. It's been 5 years since we won our case against Karen. We have since moved to a different neighborhood and have found a community that welcomes us with open arms. Our children have made friends and are doing well in school. We still have our pool, but we no longer feel like we have to constantly watch our backs. We are grateful for the experience, though. It taught us to stand up for ourselves and fight against discrimination. We hope that our story inspires others to do the same. The next one is a petty revenge story. I told my friend about this and she suggested posting it here. It was definitely petty, definitely fun, and I would recommend it to anyone dealing with annoying entitled parents. Here's some background. I'm a mom of a 7-year-old boy and I just went back to school last month. Right now I need to study a lot and I deal with a lot of guilt about not having as much time with my son. So, to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I took my son to Science World this past weekend and brought my books to study while my son explored independently. After spending 2 hours on exhibits together, my son settled into a sensory activity where he ended up playing for about an hour. This was exactly what I was hoping for, so I took a seat within eyeshot, pulled out my laptop and textbook, and started cramming. I was doing well in getting through content when this strange little spawn started scaling my leg and decided my laptop was perfect to play with. Big hell no from me. 1, it's a brand new laptop that cost half my monthly rent. 2, it's a strange germ factory on my lap during the tail end of a pandemic. 3, not my kid, not my damn job. Unfortunately, his mom was the kind that had no clue about social expectations and acted like her convenience trumps all. So when I asked her to remove the kid who was close enough to climb up into my uterus, she said, "Oh, it's okay." Yep, it's okay. See, I'm going to school for healthcare and the content I was studying was just the thing boys giggle about. So this 3 or 4-year-old boy got a lesson on the lower digestive tract. He learned about the Bristol stool chart and a whole lot of terminology, which I made sure he knew before our goodbyes. About 15 minutes passed and I told him to go tell mommy what he learned. Now, anyone who knows kids knows that at this age, they have no volume control and are completely without shame. And they love fart talk. So what did this sweet boy effing scream at his mom in this full-to-capacity, quiet zone? "Mom, I learned about poop and anuses. Did you know an anus is a muscle and that you have an anus too?" I'm quite certain they both learned something from that. The next one is an entitled people story. This happened almost 5 years ago, and I just received notice yesterday that my entitled Aunt Karen has died. I got a call from her husband asking me to attend the funeral next weekend, but I declined. My older brother Mark also declined to attend. Karen was my mother's older sister, and she constantly interfered in my mother and her children's lives. She never liked my father and always tried to tell my mother that she made a mistake by marrying him. She didn't like the name my parents picked out for my older brother, and when my great-grandmother died the day before I was born, Karen freaked out and said she wanted to name her potential future kid that so my mother couldn't use it. Then she tried to talk my mother out of it by saying it was too old-fashioned and kids would make fun of me. She criticized both my brothers and my choice of friends and even complained when I started playing softball because proper ladies didn't play sports. She said that if her daughter ever tried playing a sport, she would have her removed from the team. Spoiler, she never had children. The day after my 16th birthday, my parents drove on a business trip to California. I live in Idaho. My dad said that when they got back, he would drive me to the DMV to get my license. He never did because on the drive to California, they hit a patch of ice, spun out, crashed, and died. I was a wreck for some time after that. I didn't even want to attend my high school graduation later because my parents wouldn't be there. Their will split everything evenly between my brother and me. At the funeral, my parents, who owned their own business, production manager Tim, was talking to my brother. Mark told him that in a couple of weeks he would step in and take over, and he was counting on Tim to run things smoothly until then and help him take it over and learn the ropes. I had no interest in the business other than it was a guaranteed summer job when I was growing up, so I stayed out of it and just collected profit checks until I sold my half to Mark. Mark continues to run the business to this day. Mark told Tim that he should assure the employees that their jobs were safe and that no major changes would be made. Then one day, Aunt Karen showed up and began putting her stuff in my parents' office. When Tim confronted her about this, she said his services were no longer needed and he was fired. Tim called Mark, and Mark went down with the family attorney, some police, and the necessary paperwork, and had her removed. She said the place was now hers because it was her sister's, so she was now the owner. As long as I have known her, she has never had a steady job, and has had 3 husbands, not counting the man who called me, whom I never met, and milked each one for as much as she could get until she divorced him. The next day, I was leaving for school. I walked, it was fairly close, about 10 minutes, and saw her car and a moving van parked outside. She said she was moving into her house and then said in a sickly sweet voice that for a reasonable rent, she would continue to allow me to stay there until I graduated high school. I went in and called my brother, and he again showed up with the family attorney, police, and all the paperwork and had her removed from the property. I was at school, so I didn't get to see what happened, but that night Mark gave me a business card for a policeman who I assume helped deal with all this, and told me that if I ever saw Aunt Karen on or near the property, to call that number and report her immediately. He told me not to even try to confront her or give her a warning, just call. I do know that the movers charged her to move her stuff into the van, drive across town, get turned away, and drive back across town to move her stuff back into her apartment, which she hadn't given notice yet. I got scared to the point that I didn't like letting our dog into the backyard when I was at school. I used to put her out in the yard to let her play in the fenced backyard while I was in school. For a while, I just put her in the locked and closed garage and then cleaned up her messes when I got home in the afternoon. Eventually, Karen moved to Colorado, where I assume she met and married the man who called me and said that she had died. He couldn't find anyone from her family to attend the funeral. I chose not to tell him about her and politely said, "Sorry for your loss, but I can't make it." From discussions with Mark, I learned that he basically told him the same thing. Outside of myself, Mark, and Mark's infant daughter, I don't think she has any living relatives. I still own the house. Mark gave me his half as part of the deal where I sold him my half of the business. I still sleep in my bedroom but refuse to move into what was once my parents' bedroom, the master bedroom. I go to the local university, go Broncos, and still miss my parents and think about them every day. Even though I am 21 in less than 2 weeks, own a large home and have a lot of money in the bank, I would trade it all to have my parents back. But I don't care about the how or why of Aunt Karen's death. The next one is an entitled parent story. This encounter happened about 7 months ago. I do not want to insult your intelligence because you most likely already know what EM and I stand for, but I should say that EK in this story stands for embarrassed kid, and OG stands for an old gentleman, a 60-some-year-old guy. The kid was very polite and sorry, so this story isn't about him. Also, I'm translating this into English, so bear with me. A little backstory. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer of the nasal cavity, stage 2. The tumor was quite large, but thankfully it was non-cancerous. Edit. People have pointed out I formulated this wrong. By non-cancerous, I wanted to shorten the fact it still did not spread into other tissue, thus it was still contained, which is what I thought the word meant. I apologize for my gaps in knowledge. To get it removed, I first had to undergo aggressive chemotherapy to make it smaller. Thanks to the chemo, I had severe alopecia, hair loss, which made most of my hair, eyebrows, and even eyelashes fall out. At some point, I had to go bald, but I wore a wig because I didn't want to look like a skinhead neo-Nazi. I'm 6'4" and pretty muscular, so I thought people would assume. So once, after a long chemo session in the hospital, I took the bus home. There's only one bus that goes from the hospital to where I live, so I took that one only to see it was absolutely packed. I felt terrible thanks to the chemo, so I asked a middle-aged dude to let me sit. He was very understanding and gave me his spot without complaining. If you're reading this, thanks, bro. 2 stops later, enter EM, a lovely whale with an I demand a parley with the CEO haircut and a 12-some-year-old kid. It took her roughly 5 seconds to see the bus was packed, start looking for a free seat, spot me, and start marching, or, in her case, trying to fit in the aisle between the seats while shoving others aside, to me. When I saw her, I knew I was screwed. She then stood next to me and decided to talk to me. This is the conversation that followed. EM: Hey, could you let my kid sit down? Me: You mean me? EM: Who else? Me: Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm on my way from the hospital. And M: Cutting me off. So are we. Nonsense, the stop was a few kilometers away from the hospital. My boy just broke his leg and we're coming straight from the ER. Her kid was standing next to her without any support, clearly embarrassed. Me: He's standing next to you completely fine. EM: Look here, boy. I am 21, yo. My kid deserves to sit down. Me: Look, madam, I'm sorry, but I just got back from a chemo session in the hospital and I need to sit down and rest. I then moved my wig a bit to let her see my bald head. EM then straight up started yelling in my face. EM: Stop making excuses and get off the ducking seat, you ducking skinhead piece of crap. At this point, I was baffled. I didn't know what to say. The kid was trying to make his mother stop, and we had the attention of the whole bus. She then grabbed me and tried to yank me from my seat. I held on tight and thankfully didn't fall off. Now enter OG, my savior. OG: Will you shut the duck up, you dumb cow? M: Who do you think you're talking to? OG, with an ice-cold voice: Stop assaulting other passengers or I will be forced to step in. Also, every dumb moron could see that the dude has cancer. M: No, he's just a ducking skinhead. OG: He's got no eyebrows, you twat. Seems like that really offended M because she spun around on the spot and threw a falcon punch in OG's face. I was shocked and in disbelief. The whole bus was flabbergasted and the kid probably wished he'd never been born. OG then said something unbelievable and a golden, sweet karma moment followed. OG: Okay, that does it. Harassing passengers on the bus, physical assault against a passenger, and now assaulting an officer. You're in deep trouble, lady. OG then pulled out a badge and told her to stay where she was. Then he pulled out his phone, called someone, and told her she was being arrested. I couldn't believe it. OG was a bloody cop. At this point, EM was as white as a wall. The bus had just come to a stop, so she decided she'd make a run for it, but other passengers blocked her way. She then also got charged with resisting arrest thanks to this. 3 stops later, a police car was waiting for EM and EK. EK told me he was sorry for his mother's behavior, and I felt really sorry for the kid. He wasn't a bad child, but his mother was a hellspawn. OG then talked to me and asked me if I wanted to press charges, to which I gladly said yes. Took a statement and thankfully was kind enough to let me solve everything on the phone, so I didn't have to come to the police station for questioning. In the end, EM got some jail time, I think it was a few months, and some community service. I, in return, got a good story to tell and the sweet taste of instant karma. Right now, I'm riding the same bus home as I just got back home from the hospital after a checkup, which reminded me of this. A friend who's sitting next to me told me I should post it here. He, as much as myself, also couldn't believe that such people existed, but it seems I proved it to him. I should also note that the surgery went well. I was declared cancer-free in November, and my hair is slowly returning. Also, I don't need to wear a wig anymore. The next one is a petty revenge story. I, female, 31, had a very weird group of friends in high school. The if you have friends like this, you don't need enemies kind. One of these girls was Julia, fake name. She treated me horribly, but in the same breath would call me her best friend without letting me really have a say in the matter. She would rip me to shreds behind my back, make up rumors about me, etc. It was a very confusing time, and so our clique stuck together through years of secretly creating drama and disliking each other. In hindsight, all dumb 14-year-old high school girly stuff, but at the time, it truly hurt me a lot. Julia had to repeat a grade and change schools, and I cut off the friendship right there. She still had friends at my school though, and so the rumors continued for years. Even up to my mid-20s, I would hear from people, "Oh, weren't you the girl who slept with XYZ?" Even though I was the most boring, introverted high schooler ever. I learned to shrug it off, but knowing so many people had an awful misconception of me because of Julia was disheartening and anxiety-inducing. There was a good chance people my age had heard of me, even if they had never met me. This weekend, I was back in my hometown and attended an event with some friends, none of whom I went to high school with. We were standing at a table drinking wine and enjoying the sun, when one of my friends pointed out that a neighboring table kept looking at me. I looked, and it was Julia and a whole bunch of other women quickly turning their heads away. They had been looking me up and down and clearly gossiping. Now, I'm not currently in my best phase. I've gained some weight. I was dressed cute but sloppily and was disheveled and sweaty. I felt self-conscious, and obviously this was not how I wanted to meet a person that I had so much bad history with. But I'm not that boring, introverted high schooler anymore. Nowadays, I'm outspoken, opinionated, and a little bit mischievous when the occasion arises. So I decided it was time to stretch my acting muscles and be petty for once. I went over, all question marks and polite smiles, being like, "Hi, I saw you looking. Can I help you with anything?" I did not say that sarcastically. I was genuinely just being polite. The women looked surprised, and then one of them pointed at Julia and said, "Oh no, Julia here just said you used to go to the same school." I looked Julia right in her face and said super excitedly, "Oh really? The Montessori school?" Which was my grade school. Julia looked really put off. Her face was super scrunched up and she replied, confused, "No, our high school's name. Listen, I'm not an actress, but I know I pulled this off perfectly." I made a surprised, then pensive face and said, "Oh, and your name is?" I could tell Julia was getting irritated. She said her name and I thought for a second and then apologized and said, "Oh my goodness, this is so embarrassing. I really can't place you. How long were we in class together?" "Until 8th grade. She looked so uncomfortable at that. She was looking at my face like she clearly wanted to say more but couldn't tell if I really didn't remember her. It was glorious. I was acting my butt off. Sort of smiling apologetically, I said, "Boy, I'm so sorry. That was nearly 17 years ago, haha. But hey, please don't take it personally. I really only remember the names of the people I was friends with back then." The other women were all sort of chuckling uncomfortably, and one of Julia's friends even said, "Oh yeah, that happens to me all the time too. I can never place former classmates." We were just laughing a little, and then Julia just threw in a really meek, "We were friends." At that point, I wanted to laugh at her, but I kept it in and just sort of shrugged and said, "I'm so sorry, I really don't recall. But hey, it was nice seeing you again. I hope you ladies have a nice rest of the evening." The look on her face when I turned away was priceless. I will dream about it for years. I could tell her other friends didn't really think much about the whole interaction, but Julia was clearly embarrassed. So I made sure to wink at her when she passed me to leave the event. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.